Before the world was formed, before clay rose from riverbeds and became men, there was sound. Not the sound of wind or the rustling of trees, but a vibration so ancient, so divine, it birthed the very breath of existence. In the beginning, our ancestors did not build temples with hands. They built them with words. Words that carried fire. Words that summoned the rain. Words that awakened spirits from beneath the earth and called gods down from the sky. This is not poetry. This is memory. Across the vast continent of Africa, from the dry sands of Mali to the deep forests of the Congo, from the shrines of the Yoruba to the ancestral groves of the Dagara, the power of the spoken word was never casual. It was sacred. It was breath, and breath was life. One word, spoken in truth, could heal a village. Another, uttered in rage, could destroy bloodlines. You see, in the old world, every breath you took was connected to a spirit. Every chant, every name, every invocation was not just sound. It was a map, a key, a doorway. The elders whispered into the ears of newborns so the spirits would recognize them. Griots chanted the names of the dead so they would not vanish into silence. Priests sang into flames, sang into rivers, sang into bones, because they knew the breath of the living could stir the ancestors. But today, we speak without meaning. We shout without power. The breath that once moved mountains has become shallow, forgotten. So we ask, what happened to the sacred breath? Where did the chants go? The songs that opened portals, the whispered names that shook the leaves of the sacred trees. In this journey, we will awaken what the world tried to bury. We will walk back into the shrines, the initiation chambers, the dark forests, and the moonlit circles where the breath was taught to speak again. You will learn of incantations that call thunder, chants that protect the soul, and words, just words that could summon a god. The time has come to remember, not just what we said, but how we said it, and why the spirits answered. The sacred breath is not gone. It is waiting. Inhale. Now speak. Long before men built cities, long before iron kissed fire or drums found rhythm, the breath was already sacred. In African cosmologies, breath was never just oxygen. It was life force, the essence of divinity that animates all things. It was the invisible thread that binds spirit, body, and world. You could not see it, but you felt it in the wind, in the whisper of the trees, in the silence between thunderclaps. In Yoruba cosmology, this sacred breath is called Emi, the divine breath that Olodumare breathed into humans, transforming clay into consciousness. It is not just a soul, it is the very spirit of being. When a child is born, elders say, Emi Renyo, meaning his breath rejoices. But if a person lives without purpose, they say, Emi Refo, meaning his breath has scattered. Because breath carries purpose, and if you lose your breath, you lose your path. Among the Dagara of Burkina Faso, breath is called you, and it is believed that before you enter the world, you choose your destiny in the spirit realm and breathe that purpose into your body through ritual. That breath does not belong to you. It is on loan from the ancestors. When you die, you return it. The Zulu speak of Umoya, the spirit wind that enters the body at birth and leaves it at death. They believe the breath is the vehicle through which ancestors speak. So when one prays or sings or mourns, they are not simply expressing emotion, they are channeling Umoya. It is why the wailing of mourning women is not just grief, it is invocation. Their breath becomes a bridge. This belief is not confined to one tribe, one region. In Ghana, among the Akan, breath is tied to the concept of Kra, the soul's divine essence sent by the supreme creator, Nyame. In Ethiopia's ancient Aksumite tradition, breath is bound to Tefas, the force of life breathed by the Almighty through the mountains and valleys. Among the Igbo, the breath is Ndu, not just life, but the presence of Chi, the divine double, within. In every cosmology, there is one consistent truth. Breath is spirit in motion. But here's the secret. Breath is not silent. In the traditional worldview, speech was never casual. Every word formed from breath was considered a spell, a command, a prayer. That is why children were not allowed to speak recklessly. Why names were sacred. Why oracles did not shout. They whispered. Because true power speaks low and listens deeply. In ancient ceremonies, breath was trained. Children were taught to inhale slowly, not just to calm the body, but to focus the soul. Priests would chant for hours, not to entertain, but to shape the air around them into vessels of meaning. A diviner's words were said to vibrate with ancestral memory. The breath they used was not theirs. It was borrowed from the beyond. When rainmakers summoned clouds, they did not speak. They breathed storms. When hunters called the forest spirits, they sang in tongues learned from owls and winds. Their mouths were altars, their lungs, temples. Every syllable was a sacrifice. Do you understand, my lord? This is not mythology. This is technology, spiritual technology. Breath was, and still is, a way of unlocking the unseen world. And those who mastered it became prophets, priests, and healers. Some even became feared, because their words never missed. But the world changed. Colonialism silenced breath with fear. Schools mocked it as primitive. Churches and mosques replaced it with foreign tongues. But even in silence, the breath remained. It hid in lullabies, in work songs, in funeral dirges, in whispered blessings over food. The sacred breath adapted, it survived, it waited. And now, we return to it. To understand that words, true words, do not come from the mind. They come from the spirit through the breath. And when a people forget how to breathe with intention, they forget how to live with power. There are forces that move, yet cannot be seen, powers that speak, yet have no mouth. In the sacred traditions of Africa, these forces have names, but they are not merely words. They are energies, living truths, flowing through the breath, through the bones of the earth, through the spaces between ritual and revelation. Among the Yoruba, that force is known as Asa. Not just a word of affirmation, no. Ace is the very power to make things happen. It is the authority spoken into being by Olodumare, the creator, and passed down through the Orisha, the ancestors, and into the living. Every word spoken carries Ace, some more than others. And when elders speak, or priests chant, or sacred names are called aloud, that Ace rises like smoke to the heavens, shifting the balance of the world. But here is where the mystery deepens. Ace is not just speech. It is motion. It is intention. It is in the pounding of drums, in the feet of dancers, in the pulse of rituals repeated over generations. It is why a word whispered by a diviner can heal or curse, why a libation poured with the right chant can awaken the sleeping ancestors. Ace is the voltage of the spirit, and the trained initiate learns not to speak unless necessary, not because they are shy, but because their every utterance rearranges reality. Among the Swahili-speaking peoples and in the East African highlands, there is a word just as sacred, Roho. It means spirit or soul, but it is deeper than that. Roho is the breath of life, yes, but also the unseen force that binds living beings. It is what moves through a healer's hands when they touch the sick. It is what hovers in the air when the elders sit in council. It is what the spirits use when they take possession of a dancer in trance, when the rhythm of the drums lifts a body into ecstasy and the eyes roll back, not in madness but in revelation. That is Roho flowing freely. Roho does not scream. It sings. It moves like incense through the room, and when the ceremony is over, you feel it has left. But some part of it always stays, in the echoes, in the quiet, in the breath. In the forests of the Congo, the Bakongo people speak of a spiritual force called Moya, wind, breath, spirit, all in one. It is said that when a person is truly in tune, they can feel Moya before a storm, or sense it in the way the leaves speak. It is why many traditional healers walk with staffs carved with spirals, representing the breath's eternal journey through the cycles of life and death. The elders will tell you that Ace, Roho, Moya, they are not separate. They are local expressions of a universal current, a spiritual electricity that pulses through Africa's sacred rituals, from Senegal to Sudan, from Benin to Botswana. It has no central temple, no official scripture, but it lives in every chant, every drum, every fire that has been lit in the name of the ancestors. When a woman sings over her newborn child, she transmits Ace. When a masked dancer channels a deity, it is Roho dancing with human bones. When a diviner stares into the flames and hears words that are not his own, it is Moya whispering truths from the unseen. And this, my lord, is where the sacred breath becomes divine technology. Because unlike modern tools made of steel and wire, this technology is born of sound, rhythm, memory. It can only be activated through alignment of heart, of voice, of spirit. In secret societies and spiritual enclaves across the continent, initiates are trained to feel Ace before they ever speak it. They are taught that their own breath must first be clean, purged of ego, fear, and confusion, before they can command the sacred forces. Because Ace is not granted to the loud, it is granted to the aligned. That is why many African traditions emphasize silence before speaking. You cannot call the gods with dirty breath. You cannot invoke Roho while harboring bitterness. You cannot channel Moya while filled with doubt. Breath must be pure, words must be measured, and intention must be clear. Let us not be mistaken, my lord. This power is not lost. It lives today in the whispers of griots, in the gospel choruses of Nigeria, in the hums of women grinding millet in Mali. It survives in the rap verses of African youth, whose rhymes sometimes carry more truth than preachers. It echoes in the rituals of the diaspora, in Brazil, in Haiti, in the deep south of the United States, where Ace became Amen, and Roho danced in black churches on Sunday morning. The breath remembers. The current flows still, but only the willing can ride it. In many places, language is seen as a tool, a way to express thoughts, emotions, commands. But in ancient African traditions, language, true language, is not a tool. It is a force, a weapon, a bridge, a spell. Words do not simply describe reality. In the hands of the initiated, words create it. There are phrases that, when spoken in the correct rhythm, open doors that remain locked to the uninitiated. There are names of spirits that must not be spoken unless the air has been cleansed and the ancestors have been invited. And there are songs that must be sung in darkness, because light itself would shiver at their meaning. The Yoruba say that ofun rara ni, words carry power, but not all words are equal. Only those spoken with correct intonation, timing, and spiritual authority carry A's. That is why ritual speech is often sung, chanted, or whispered, not merely read or shouted. because the tone, the breath, the vibration, they matter more than the syllables. Among the Fon people of Dahomey, an entire sacred language is used in Vodun ceremonies, known only to the priests and priestesses. These are not just codes or dialects. They are frequencies. When an initiate chants to Legba, the gatekeeper deity, he is not merely asking permission to speak. He is aligning his spirit with the key that opens the veil. And if his tone is off, if his heart is impure, Legba will not answer. The gate will remain shut. The Akan of Ghana know this well. In their libation rituals, words must be carefully chosen and delivered with rhythm and grace. Elders pour drink upon the earth, calling not just on gods, but on specific clans, lineages, and spiritual memories. Each name is a spark, each syllable a key. Speak them wrongly, and nothing happens. Speak them rightly, and even the long dead may stir. The Zulu understand the force of spoken command through their praise poetry, called Izibongo. These are not flattery. They are power words, weaving together lineage, history, and divine authority into a rhythm so potent that even kings are humbled. Warriors before battle would recite their Izibongo, not just to boast, but to activate ancestral memory, to awaken the blood with the spirit of those who fought before. My Lord, let us not overlook the Dogon people of Mali, whose sacred speech is embedded within their cosmology. Dogon priests speak in symbolic language, often unintelligible to outsiders, but among them, it is understood that to speak is to shape. Words echo with cosmic significance. A mispronounced word in a Dogon ritual could realign the stars. Their incantations, passed down orally for thousands of years, are not just prayers. They are maps of the invisible world, layered with cosmic functions. This sacred approach to speech is not isolated. Across the continent, from Egypt's ancient Heka, the magical utterance that shapes reality, to Ethiopia's Ge'ez prayers chanted in age-old cadence, to the secret songs of Sangomas in southern Africa, one theme echoes. Words are spiritual architecture. You see, in African traditions, the spoken word is not entertainment. It is not decoration. It is creation. That is why children are taught to respect speech, why silence is valued before ceremony, why names are not carelessly spoken, why, when elders speak, everyone listens, not out of custom, but out of survival. Because the right word, spoken at the wrong time, can curse a house, and the right name sung at dawn can summon a rain that has not fallen in years. Let us also honor the diaspora, where this sacred speech has survived under many guises. In Haiti, in the chants of Vodou. In Cuba, within Santeria's Lukumi prayers. In Brazil's Candomblé, where Yoruba incantations still thunder across drums in Salvador. Even in the black church traditions of the American South, the preacher's call and response, the melodic sermon, the shout, these are echoes of ancestral incantation. The voice rises, breaks, and returns. The breath deepens. The people say, Amen. But what they are truly saying is, Ace. Let it be so. And here lies a secret. The most powerful rituals in Africa were never written. They were remembered. They were encoded in song, in rhythm, in proverbs, in silence. And because they were never written, they could never be burned. Colonizers could destroy shrines, but they could not destroy what lives in the breath. And that is how Africa survived. In African spiritual traditions, the living and the dead are never truly separated. The veil is thin, and through sacred rituals, chants, and trance states, that veil can be parted, if only for a moment. Communication with the ancestors is not superstition. It is ancestral technology. It is ancestral memory made alive. It is dialogue, not monologue. In the dim red-lit courtyards of the Aruba, during Egungun festivals, the ancestors do not just arrive in memory. They arrive in cloth, in dust, in the masked figure that twirls like a wind-possessed. The Egungun is not costume. It is portal. It is not performance. It is presence. When the spirit is called through the sacred drums and names are invoked, the dead enter the body, and they speak. Their voices echo through the performer, sometimes in riddles, sometimes in rebuke. The community listens, not as spectators, but as witnesses. Among the Dagara of Burkina Faso, the role of the Candomblé, the little people of the other world, is critical in ancestral dialogues. Through diviners known as Babalao and sacred griot, the spirits speak in subtle ways. Through the rustling of leaves, the movement of stones, the whispers in dreams. The Dagara do not separate visions from reality. Dreams are not illusions. They are conversations, answers to questions never spoken aloud. And sometimes the answers come before the questions. The Zulu Sangoma, cloaked in beads and ancestral cloth, will enter trance and allow the Amadlozi, ancestral spirits, to mount them. The Sangoma does not pretend. She is ridden. Her voice may change, her eyes may roll back, but when she speaks, her words are not her own. The community gathers because they know the ancestors have something to say, a warning, a guidance, a revelation. The atmosphere is charged, electric. No one dares to interrupt, because in that moment, time folds, and the dead are not gone, they are here. In Ethiopia's Deb Terrace, the calling of the saints and holy spirits often walks a fine line between Christian mysticism and pre-Christian invocation. Their prayers are layered in ancient ge'ez, carrying codes that were never meant for casual listeners. Every syllable opens a layer of the spiritual sky. As they chant and sway, some begin to shake, others weep, because the words awaken memories that did not begin in this life. Even in Senegal's Serer tradition, the Pangoul, ancestral spirits and intermediaries, are invoked during major life events. Through offerings of millet, blood, and libations, the people ask the spirits to come, not just to observe, but to intervene. A birth, a harvest, a war. They do not begin without asking, because the Serer understand. Nothing born of man survives without ancestral permission. And then there is Haiti, forged in fire and defiance, where Vodou practitioners invoke Baron Samedi or Azili Dantor, and the Loa ride the bodies of their devotees. The person is no longer themselves. They speak with voices older than time, dance in ways they cannot recall afterward, and offer truths that cut straight to the soul. These are not hallucinations. They are ancestral downloads, raw, real, and irreversible. Let us not forget the quiet seers of the African forest, who use cowrie shells, kola nuts, or even the shadows of trees to receive messages from those beyond. They sit in silence for hours, listening, not to the wind, but through it. Because the ancestors do not always shout. Sometimes they whisper, and only the prepared ear can hear them. In these sacred moments, language changes. The body becomes a medium, the voice becomes a bridge, the spirit becomes a vessel. Whether through ecstatic dance, chant, fire, or stillness, the point is not the method. It is the presence, the response, the evidence that we are not alone. And what of the diaspora? In the black churches of America, where the Holy Ghost descends and grandmothers shake under divine fire, it is not so far removed. The ancestral channel still flows, only dressed now in crosses and hymnals. In Brazil's Candomblé, In the Dominican Republic's 21 divisiones, in Cuba's Santeria, the old dialogues are still happening. The ancestors still answer, in tongues, in songs, in possession. The legacy was never broken, only disguised. And here is the mystery most outsiders miss. You cannot command the ancestors. You must earn their presence. You must approach with humility, clarity, and an open spirit. Because once the channel opens, you cannot control what comes through. You may hear forgiveness or judgment. You may receive comfort or a call to change. That is the risk and the gift of ancestral dialogue. Across the African continent, language was never limited to speech. In ancient temples, forest shrines, desert altars, and village compounds, the spoken word was only a doorway, not the entire house. The real message lay behind it, in tone, rhythm, repetition, in silence, in gesture, in melody, in movement. The voice was sacred not because it was loud, but because it could carry spirit. In West Africa, among the Yoruba, songs are not entertainment, they are invocation. Every orisha has a rhythm. Every rhythm carries a code. To sing to Sango is to strike thunder in the unseen world. To chant for Oshun is to release sweetness into the spirit realm. These are not songs that tell a story. They are songs that become the story. The moment the sacred drum, be it the bata, dundun, or gangan, begins to speak, the gates between the worlds open. The spirits are not summoned. They are enticed by sound. Among the Dogon people of Mali, symbols are not drawn casually. Their cosmograms, carved into the sand or painted on sacred walls, are more than decoration. They are maps of the cosmos. The lines, spirals, and angles are reflections of star paths, ancestral roots, and spiritual equations. These are not dead scripts. They are living geometry, a way to make the invisible world visible. Each mark is a breath, each figure a prayer. The Nsibidi script of the Igbo and Cross River peoples is one of Africa's greatest hidden alphabets. Carved on ekpie masks, secret society totems, and ancient stones, these glyphs are not meant for common eyes. Nsibidi speaks of contracts, love, war, justice, and destiny. But it doesn't speak in letters. It speaks in ideas, woven in symbols, curves, and spirals. To read Nsibidi is to think like the gods, abstract, multi-dimensional, beyond time. In Ethiopia, the ancient Ge'ez language, used by priests, monks, and the mystical Deteras, carries chants so powerful that they are never spoken outside the walls of the sacred. When sung, the words are not merely heard, they vibrate through bone and blood. These are chants that alter the atmosphere, that make even the air feel heavier with presence. It is said that some Deteras can sing an illness out of the body, or call protection from angelic spirits through just a verse. Among the Bakongo people, the Dikenga symbol, known as the Congo cosmogram, speaks of the 4 moments of the sun: birth, life, death, and rebirth. But it is not just a spiritual belief. It is a cipher. Laid into the floor of initiation chambers, it encodes the entire journey of the soul, not just in one life, but across lifetimes. The circle and cross are not Christian, though they may resemble it. They are older, and they speak in a language the soul already knows. Even the Berbers of North Africa, with their Tifina script, write prayers into jewelry, tattoos, and architecture. A pendant is not just an adornment. It is a protective script, a story in symbol form, whispered into being by the hands of a spiritual artisan. These alphabets are not just letters. They are locks and keys, each symbol opening a gate in the physical and spiritual realm. And what of songs? In Ghana, the Akan use drum language, a tonal form of speech played on talking drums, to send messages across villages, announce births, and warn of coming war. The drum becomes a mouth, the drummer becomes a messenger, and the village listens not with ears alone, but with memory. Because every family has a rhythm, every soul has a sound print. And when your rhythm is played, you know it's you being called. The Zulu Imbongi, or praise poets, chant the genealogy of a king or warrior in rhythmic verse that becomes prophecy. Their voice is a living link to ancestors, a verbal chain that binds the present to the sacred past. Their chants are not memorized. They are downloaded, received in trance or through dreams, then shaped in breath. These chants are portable temples, carried in lungs and loins. And across the Atlantic, in the diaspora, these hidden codes have survived, cloaked in gospel, blues, and slave chants. The call and response in black churches is not only Christian, it is ancestral. The moan of a spiritual is not just sorrow, it is the sound of sacred memory. In Haiti, Brazil, Cuba, and the American South, spirituals often carried coded instructions for escape, protection, or revolt. And still do. So when people ask, why does African music move the soul so deeply? The answer is simple, because it was never meant to entertain. It was meant to awaken, to remind, to reconnect. The chant, the beat, the breath, these are how spirits recognize their name. In Africa, nothing is meaningless. Every drumbeat, every pattern, every name whispered into the fire has weight, has purpose, has power. These codes live not in books, but in bodies. They are danced, drummed, chanted, worn, inked, hidden, and revealed only to the initiated. When the ships tore across the Atlantic, the flesh was chained, but the breath was not. The tongues may have been silenced in iron, but in the night, in secret groans and whispered songs, the old voices continued. The breath of the ancestors, though carried into exile, refused to vanish. It transformed, it adapted, it survived, and through it, Africa never left. In the cane fields of Haiti, in the tobacco plantations of Cuba, and the rice paddies of South Carolina, the breath of the continent was carried by those who remembered, not through language alone, but through spirit, rhythm, invocation, and fire. African spiritual systems crossed the sea, hidden in lullabies, cooking pots, beads, braids, and bone-deep memory. What was once sung beside sacred rivers was now whispered under moonlight beside cotton fields. In Haitian Vodou, the breath became prayer and possession. The LWA, spirit beings, ancestors, cosmic intelligences, are summoned not by doctrine, but by song, drum, and dance. The breath leaves the body. A new one enters, a spirit descends. This is not metaphor, it is the divine exchange, the living inheritance of African cosmology. Each Loa has its rhythm, its dance, its offerings. This system, born in Dahomey in Congo, rebirthed in the Caribbean, is not a copy. It is a continuation. In Brazil, among the enslaved who carried the wisdom of the Yoruba, Bantu, and Fon peoples, Candomblé emerged. Here, the Orixás were not forgotten. They were renamed, hidden behind saints, but always remembered. When they call on Ogun, it is with the same drum patterns that echo in West Africa. The breath moves through chant, the trance dances begin, and the spirit rides again. In Cuba, the sacred breath took form as Santeria, where the Orishas walk through drummers and dancers, bearing messages, healing, and judgment. The Lukumi language, though no longer spoken as a mother tongue, is still sung, not forgotten, but preserved in rhythm. The breath of Africa didn't die. It simply changed direction. In the Gullah Geechee culture of the southeastern United States, chants, praise house rhythms, and ring shouts retain echoes of Congo and Mande cosmologies. They speak of spirits who walk the land, of ancestors who never left, of a God who hears not through sermons, but through moans, hums, and feet stomping on dirt floors. Even the blues, yes, the music that birthed rock, jazz, and hip-hop, carries the shape of mourning songs from the Sahel, the minor tones of griots, the soul-deep cry of a people who remembered that spirit moves through sound. Every every slide of the guitar string, every call and response, echoes the African priest calling the gods with voice alone. And in churches, what people call the Holy Ghost, moving through black congregations, the shouts, the dancing, the sudden possession of joy or weeping, these are not solely Christian experiences. They are ancestral residues, reawakening. The breath remembers where it came from, and in the sacred chaos of Sunday worship, the oracles of old rise again. This is the diaspora's great resistance, survival through spirit. The colonizers took the lands, the slave ships took the bodies, but the gods were never captured. The sacred breath was too subtle, too fluid. It moved through melody and mantra. It whispered in dreams. It wrapped itself in symbols and hid behind veils of saint statues and altar cloths. But it was there. It is still there. In Suriname, the Winti tradition kept the pantheon of Akan and Yoruba spirits alive. In Jamaica, the Kumina tradition still summons the spirits of the dead, and ancestral languages are heard again in trance. In Trinidad, Shango Baptists mix Christian liturgy with African possession rituals, singing to both Jesus and Sango in the same breath. And across the modern world, from Paris to Brooklyn, from Lagos to London, the diaspora is remembering. They are returning not to a place, but to a pulse, a rhythm, a breath. The sacred breath that made them human, divine, and whole. So when someone says, "That song gave me chills," or "That voice made me cry and I don't know why," it is because the ancestral breath is still blowing, still singing, still awakening. In this world of screens and signals, we think knowledge is power. But in the old ways, it is breath that gives life to power. And the breath that crossed the sea never stopped breathing. It waits, ready to rise in anyone who dares to remember, to chant, to open their mouth, and let the ancient voice flow through them. The diaspora did not just preserve African spirituality. It multiplied it. Each land it touched gave it a new body, a new rhythm, a new breath. And still, it sings. There comes a moment in every spiritual path when voice must become vow, when chant must transform into covenant. This is the path of initiation, not into fame or worldly power, but into the secret fire of truth, burden, and purpose. In Africa, the spoken word is not mere sound. It is a being, a force, a traveler. And to be initiated into the mysteries of incantation and prayer is to carry a dangerous gift, the ability to speak and shift reality. Initiation begins not in the crowd, but in the bush. In many African traditions, one is led away from the city, from the family, from the noise, into the sacred forest, the caves, or the shadowed spaces where spirits dwell. It is here, beneath trees that have watched generations pass, that the initiate is taught how to breathe, not just with lungs, but with soul. One must unlearn the noise of the world to hear the voice of the divine. In Yoruba Ifa tradition, the Babalawo is not made overnight. He is trained for years, memorizing thousands of verses, each a sacred code, a gateway. His tongue must be able to carry not just rhythm, but revelation. When he speaks the Odu, he is not guessing, he is channeling. His mouth becomes the mouth of Orunmila. His breath becomes the map of fate. In the Dagara tradition of Burkina Faso, the griot is more than a historian. He is an initiated vessel. Before he ever touches a drum or sings a name, he must undergo rituals of cleansing, possession, and ancestral reawakening. His voice is not allowed to lie. His words must match the spirit world's rhythm or risk wrath from beyond. Among the Zulu, the Isangoma, diviner healer, is called by dreams, sickness, and strange behavior. This spiritual madness is not punishment. It is the calling. The community knows the signs, speaking in tongues no one taught, wandering alone, speaking to unseen beings. This is not delusion. This is the voice of the ancestors breaking through. The initiate is taken for training, songs, herbs, trances, prayers, until their body becomes a safe home for spirit to enter and speak. In Akan and Yahweh traditions, the one who will carry the sacred breath must undergo ritual tests. Some are burned, not with fire, but with song, forced to hold a single sacred note for hours, to test their connection to the divine. Some are buried in symbolic death, then resurrected with a new name, a new voice, a new responsibility. Initiation is often accompanied by scarification or marking, not just on the body, but on the soul. You become someone else. You walk differently, speak differently. Your breath is no longer yours. It belongs to the lineage of spirits who walk behind you. And then, the final test. To speak publicly, in sacred tongue, in rhythm, in front of the elders. Not a performance, a communion. The incantation must not only be memorized, it must summon. If the wind shifts, if the flames rise, if someone falls into trance, then the breath was accepted. The gods heard. This is why in ancient Africa, when kings were crowned, priests were called first, not to bless with oil, but with word. The priest would recite the cosmic laws, call on ancestors, summon the winds, name the rivers. Only when the spirits confirmed could the human be enthroned. Power without sacred breath was considered empty, even dangerous. And when the initiated returns to the world, they do not shout. They whisper. They walk slowly. They have touched something that cannot be explained. They have seen the bones of language. They have spoken to trees and heard the reply of stones. Their voice is now charged. Even their silence carries warning. In many traditions, the newly initiated are forbidden to speak at all for days or weeks after the rites, not because they have nothing to say, but because the voice must relearn the world. What they speak next will be their first true words. A new beginning. In modern times, some say these practices are lost. But listen carefully. In the rural corners of Africa, in hidden compounds, in disguised ceremonies, you will still find them. The ones who speak storms into existence, the ones who can sing away sickness, the ones who know the true name of trees, the ones who chant and the wind obeys. Initiation is not a ritual, it is a death. The death of the ordinary voice, and the birth of the Divine One. To be a speaker of sacred breath is to become the breath itself, to walk as wind, to carry prayers not just to the heavens, but into the bones of the earth. When the drums fall silent and the fire burns low, what remains is the breath, the final breath, not of death, but of memory, of power, of spoken eternity. In Africa, the breath is not just life. It is lineage. It is the inheritance of those who dared to speak the names of gods, of rivers, of spirits, and of secrets. And when they did, the universe listened. The ancient chants may not be on YouTube, they may not be printed in books, but they are written in the wind, in the heartbeat of trees, in the mouths of griots, and in the quiet songs of elders who whisper before sunrise. The sacred breath is alive, still breathing, still calling. It whispers through the egungun dancers, cloaked in cloth, spinning in rhythm with ancestors. It rises in the voice of the sand trance dancers of the Kalahari, where heat and rhythm birth visions. It hides in the lullabies sung by mothers in the night, who don't just soothe their babies, but bind their spirits with invisible threads of protection. It rides on the tongues of the Dagara, the Dogon, the Shona, the Igbo, the Serer, every people whose language was once born not for trade or gossip, but for ritual, for revelation. But in today's world of noise, what is the place of the sacred voice? Where does the incantation fit between TikToks and news feeds? The answer, my lord, is everywhere, because the power of the breath cannot be silenced. It shifts forms, not meanings. The rapper who channels his ancestors in poetic rhythm, the preacher who thunders like Ogun's hammer, the poet who names her pain like a healer, the activist who speaks for the dead in a courtroom. These are new incantations, new prayers. And in the diaspora, Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, Brazil, Mississippi, the breath never left. The slaves brought it across the Atlantic, tied to their tongues, encrypted in songs of sorrow and rebellion. They knew that even when chains were locked, the spirit was still speaking. To understand African spirituality is to understand that the gods don't live far away. They live inside the voice. The incantation is not a wish. It is a weapon, a mirror, a medicine, a map. And those who know how to breathe it rightly can tear down empires or rebuild the soul of a broken world. So now we return where we began, to the sacred breath, to the voice that remembers, the chant that never dies. You who are watching this, you carry this breath too. You may not have entered the bush, you may not have danced before a sacred fire, but if you have ever spoken with truth, if you have ever prayed with tears, if you have ever felt a chill when a name was spoken, you are part of this story, because the breath of Africa is not a relic. It is a river, and it is flowing still.